I've long been interested in sort of the conflict that arises between Indigenous communities, their land use practices, traditions, values, belief systems, and kind of state-led fortress, colonial forms of conservation, right? And I've long been a critic of that. And so now I find myself in a much happier place in many ways, which is like finding solutions to that colonial model and really building collaboratively models of conservation that are rooted in Indigenous governance systems, Indigenous law, and Indigenous knowledge systems. Because, I mean, to put it bluntly, the colonial mode of conservation practice, which is the dominant one globally, has failed us tremendously as a global community in terms of biodiversity, climate change, all the rest of it. It's rooted in a mindset that is political, social divisions, and so on. And so what we have is an opportunity now in Canada and elsewhere in the world to build new models of conservation governance that build, I think, to use Eli Enz's term, kind of futures of abundability versus sustainability, right? Where really what we're doing is creating abundance of livelihood security, of biodiversity. I'm not going to get into my skepticism around carbon offsetting or carbon markets as having real environmental effects. I'm not sure. The jury is out, let's say. But I am interested in, especially because Indigenous partners in Canada in particular, but I've also had some experience with it in Southeast Asia, are asking for it, right? They're like, can I do this? What's that going to look like, right? So I think for me, it's an interesting potential tool and income stream that nations can use to build these alternative political economies, these alternative futures that rely on a different kind of relationship with nature instead of one that's purely about extraction or purely about separation. And so ethical space really has to be built in the conservation sector, and then it needs to be operationalized, right? Which means, like, how do we exchange ideas honestly, authentically, transparently, and in a heartfelt way that brings yourself as a person and not just yourself as a representative of some institution into the conversation. It complements this Mi'kmaq notion that called two-eyed seeing, which is also about how do you see the world using the strengths of two different knowledge systems without compromising the integrity of either of those. So it's not about incorporating one with the other. It's about weaving or braiding or the other kind of metaphors that are being used to kind of see how these things can work together so that we can not go back in time, but create something new with all of our collective strength, right? I mean, that's really the aspirational goal.